Everyone in my town knows the rules about Clay Hill Road, and I broke them twice. I grew up hearing stories about the bridge on Clay Hill Road. They weren't told like campfire stories with exaggerated voices or laughs afterward. They were told casually, like warnings that people didn't even realize they were repeating. Clay Hill Road is a 2-lane stretch that cuts through a thick patch of woods on the edge of town. The only thing that you can see are trees, fog, and a narrow concrete bridge crossing a shallow creek. The bridge has a name, but no one ever uses it. Everyone just calls it the bridge. Well, the story goes back about 50 years. Supposedly, late at night, a woman was driving home with her young child in the back seat. It was foggy, and the road was slick, and somewhere near the bridge something went wrong. The car smashed through the guardrail and rolled into the creek below. By the time anyone found it, both the mother and child were gone. After that, people started seeing her. They say if you drive that road too late at night, you might see a woman in a long white dress walking along the bridge, crying and screaming for her baby, reaching out to passing cars. And if you stop to help her, she makes sure that you never leave Clay Hill Road. At least that was the version that I heard as a kid. But as an adult, the details got even worse. People talked about seeing brake lights ahead of them where there was no car, and about radios cutting out or skid marks appearing overnight, and sometimes about single car accidents that always seemed to happen late at night. But of course you can avoid this. There are certain simple rules. Don't stop, don't slow down, and don't look back. You know, I believe this in a way that you believe something that you just don't want to test. But 2 nights ago, I went to test my luck. The first night wasn't supposed to mean anything. My friend Nick and I were just killing time. It was a little after midnight, and we had been driving around talking about nothing important. And at some point, without really even thinking about it, I turned on the Clay Hill Road. Nick noticed immediately. "You taking a shortcut?" he asked. I just shrugged and I said, "The road's empty. It'll save time." He tried to tell me to turn around, but instead I laughed and said, "Man, I'm just trying to meet the woman in white." Nick was unsettled, and he said, "Relax, man. You still believe in that crap? Let's not do this." I said, "What? Are you scared?" And he said, "Yeah, honestly I am a little." The road felt different at night. The headlights barely cut through the fog and the trees pressed in on both sides, their branches arching overhead. The radio played quietly in the background. It was just some late night show, the host's voice calm and steady. Suddenly we rounded a bend, and the bridge came into view. Even from a distance, it didn't look inviting. The concrete was darker than the road around it, stained by years of moisture. The guardrails bent inward in places like they had been hit over and over again. I slowed down, and eventually I came to a complete stop. I really wanted to scare Nick, so I turned the headlights off. This engulfed the road in darkness, and it was only half lit by the moon. The bridge sat just ahead of us, half swallowed by fog, and for a moment neither of us spoke. "Do you see anything?" I asked. "No," Nick said. "Do you?" I just shook my head. "So what are you doing?" Nick asked. I just want to see. That's all." The fog shifted, and I turned the lights back on. Our headlights illuminated the start of the bridge, but there was no one there. I started to relax, and I lightly pushed on the gas. We slowly came to the start of the bridge. But suddenly, the radio cut out. The voice disappeared mid-sentence, replaced by a sharp burst of static, scaring both of us and causing us to jolt back in our seats. Before I could do anything else, the static resolved into a voice. "This is an emergency broadcast." But the tone, it was wrong, flat, and mechanical. It was louder than the radio had been moments before. "Please remain indoors. Do not travel unless absolutely necessary." I felt my stomach drop. "What the hell is this?" Nick muttered. The voice continued, distorted and crackling. "An incident has occurred. Authorities are responding. Avoid wooded areas and roadways." The headlights flickered. Just for a second, but it was enough. I slammed my foot on the gas. The tires screeched as the car lurched forward, shooting across the bridge and out the other side. I didn't look to the sides. I didn't look down. I stared straight ahead. My heart was pounding. As soon as we were off the bridge, the radio went dead. There was no longer a static or a voice. Just silence. I didn't slow down until we were on the main road, lights and buildings surrounding us again. "Okay," he said. "That was weird, right? Like just a strange coincidence." Emergency broadcasts don't usually work like that," I said. We didn't talk much about it after that. We dropped it the way you drop something you don't want to examine too closely. But the next day, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I looked up emergency alerts from the night before, and there was nothing. No incidents, no warnings. So I told myself it had to just be a freak coincidence. But part of me wondered if the story was real. And if it was, I needed to know. The next night, I went back alone. I didn't tell Nick. I didn't tell anyone. It was after midnight again when I turned on the Clay Hill Road. The fog was thicker this time, clinging to the ground like it didn't want to let go. My radio was working normally. Music played softly, filling the car just enough to keep the silence at bay. I drove slower than I had any right to. And then the bridge came into view sooner than I expected. And this time she was already there. She stood right on the side of the bridge, facing away from me. A woman in a long white dress, the fabric clinging to her like it was soaked through. Her hair hung in dark, wet strands down her back. She was crying. Not loudly, just this broken, gasping sound that felt too intimate to hear from inside my car. Instinctively, I slowed down. But apart from that, everything inside of me screamed at me to keep driving. But my foot hovered over the brake. She snapped her head. Her face was pale, unnaturally so, and her eyes looked unfocused like they weren't really seeing me, and her mouth was wide open. "Please," she said. "My baby. I can't find my baby." She stepped closer to the road, reaching out with one hand trembling. "Please," she sobbed. "He was right here." I remembered the stories, and I remembered the rule. Don't stop. So I pressed the gas, and the moment that I did, everything changed. Her crying stopped instantly, her head snapped toward me, and her face twisted into something straight out of a horror movie. Her mouth opened wider than it should have, stretching into a silent scream. And suddenly the radio exploded with static. The headlights flickered violently, plunging the road into darkness for a split second. The steering wheel jerked hard to the left, and I fought to keep the car straight as the bridge seemed to stretch endlessly ahead of me. I heard the scream then, right next to my window. Not for her baby, but for me. I gasped it, and the road warped, bending in impossible ways. The guardrails blurred, and for a horrifying second I was sure that I was going over the edge. And suddenly, all at once, I was off the bridge. The fog thinned, and the radio snapped back on, blasting music so loud that it made me flinch. But I didn't stop driving, not until I was home. And in the morning, the local news reported a single-car accident on Clay Hill Road. Apparently, a man had lost control near the bridge and hit a tree. He died on impact at the scene. They even included a photo, and I half expected to see me. But I didn't. And there, barely visible through the fog in the background, was a woman in white, dressed, soaked, standing on the bridge, just watching. You know, I think I understand the rules now. She doesn't directly make you crash. She just makes sure that you don't want to stop driving, and if you're not careful, you'll meet the same fate as her. Because once you see her, you'll do anything not to look back.